Hello friends and fam, welcome back to my channel. It is the second video I am doing of this year. So yes for consistency. So today we're going to be talking about my best and worst, not worst, but most disappointing books of 2021. I managed to read 35 books last year. That was not my goal going into it, but here we are. Just thinking back on the reading year as a whole, I read a lot of big books. Like you're going to see in when I start talking about it, there are a few books that I've read that are like over 1,000 pages. So that's why my reading, like technically my page numbers were lower too. Okay, I did read less than I did last year. It wasn't like the most spectacular reading year. I just feel like a lot of the books I read were kind of meh. And then I did have a handful of new all-time favorites. Well, one all-time favorite in particular that I will be talking about. As far as the structure of this video, I'm going to be talking about my most disappointing books first, so then we can end on a positive. I don't really have that many disappointing books to share with you because a lot of the books I read were kind of just, they were just all right. I wasn't like super disappointed, but I wasn't super overjoyed. I only have like a list of like 2 or 3. So all right, let's just get into it. So I want to preface me talking about my most disappointing books by saying if these are your favorite books, that is amazing. This is just my opinion, and you don't have to agree with me or disagree with me. There are people out there who completely disagree with me, and that's okay. That's what reading's about. We're trying to express our opinions and like say what we liked and didn't like. And that's totally okay. Please don't take offense. So the first most disappointing book that I read this year was actually the first book I read of this year. And I think this is a hot take, but it is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. By the way, sorry, I don't have physical copies of a handful of these books either. I like to loan books out to friends a lot. This was the first book I read of this year, and it was the definition of good book, wrong time. If you gave this book to me when I was like 18, I would have ate it up. I would have loved it. Before I had started reading like more consistently, Kristen Hanna's Firefly Lane was like my favorite book of all time. It like spoke to me. I feel like I do need to reread it just to like understand if I actually love it or not. But The Nightingale, the farther I get away from it, the more I dislike it. I think I originally rated it 4 stars, but I'm just lowering it. Like, as the longer it sit with me, the more I don't like the book. I will admit I did cry, but that doesn't mean that I liked it. I also cry at everything. The Nightingale is a historical fiction set in World War II. It is about 2 sisters, Vianne and Isabel, and kind of their relationship. So they are living in France during the time of the Nazi takeover. I do think a lot of people have read this book, and I know it's a lot of people's favorite books, but this book just like really put me off of World War II fiction. I don't think I ever want to read another book that is set in World War II. I think one thing that really disappointed me about this book was, okay, so you're following these 2 women, right? And Isabel, who's like the younger sister, she's a badass. She like is plowing the fields and going and doing her thing and like saving people and shit. But like it always keeps coming back to she needs a man, she needs a man. And I'm just like, no, you don't need a man. You don't need a man. But it just felt like it was constantly like, oh, she's great, but she needs a man, but she has all these feelings. I'm like, just be independent, just be a badass, go do you, and you don't need anyone else. I did appreciate the sister Vianne's character arc. I thought it was really beautiful, but I just was like let down by this book in general. I think I would have really appreciated the story more if it wasn't constantly talking about how she needs to be with a man. I understand that's a human want to be able to like be loved and stuff, but like Isabel was so badass, and I'm just like, it clouded my vision the whole time. And I was just disappointed by it. And like I said, the farther I get away from it, the lower my rating gets. Will I read Kristen Hanna again? Yes. It didn't meet my expectations for how much it was hyped up to me. All right, the next book that was most disappointing to me was Dear Edward by Anne Napolitano. This is about, was it after 9/11? It was like a plane crash or something? Yes, it was about a plane crash. See, that's how memorable this book was to me. I don't remember any of it. I literally remember reading this book, and at the end I was like, what? I don't even know what this book was about. It left 0 impressions for me. I think it was about a boy who survived a plane crash and kind of the aftermath, kind of jumped back and forth between after the plane crash happened and then the people and who was on the plane. Like these people's lives that were on the plane that did crash. I thought this book was extremely forgettable, as you can tell. I finished the book and I was just like, I don't even know why I read that. I just felt like there was no point to it. I don't know, I was just really disappointed by it, just in general. This is not a book that stood out to me at all. I read this for a book club that I'm in with my cousin, and it just fell flat for me. And the last book that was most disappointing to me was A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. I was so excited to read this because look how beautiful this book is. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. This wasn't a bad book by any means. I just didn't connect with it. I think I discovered a lot more of my taste for middle grade this year, and understanding what I do like in a middle grade, and I think this was just too young for me. It's a story about three sisters. There's a curse set on this family, and they're trying to figure out how to break the curse. This is such a cute book, but I just feel like it was too young. Like I think I enjoy a little bit more advanced reader middle grades than this one. It's very short. I mean, it was only like 250 pages or 300 pages, and the font is pretty big, but I just like, I wasn't reaching to pick it up. It wasn't something that I was looking forward to finishing or reading or finding out what happened. It just kind of was to me. Like, I've read other middle grades before that just give me like this extremely heartwarming feeling, and it's like a warm hug, but this just, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. And I can understand why people really enjoy this book, but I just think it was a little bit too young for me. So, all right, now we're finished with the disappointments of this year. Now we're moving on to the faves, which I'm so excited to talk about because my favorite book that I've ever read is going to be in this list. This is in no particular order except at the very end. So the first book that I really enjoyed was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I'm not gonna give away a whole lot because you have to go in this book knowing absolutely nothing. But it's about this man who is living in kind of this museum-esque place. Basically, the museum, it's like this massive, massive museum, and it has like days and nights and seasons and all this kind of stuff. It's very, very strange. You're trying to figure out what's going on and why he's here. I wouldn't classify this as like a mystery, but it kind of is a little bit. I loved this book. I read it in one day. It was so quick, very easy read. I mean, you couldn't stop reading. You had to figure out what was going on. I gave this 5 stars. All of these books are 5 stars, by the way, but I could not stop trying to figure out what was happening. If you just need like a quick, I'm trying to get out of a reading slump book, this is the book for you. It was amazing. It's very plot driven. Yeah, it's just kind of like a mystery that you're trying to figure out, why is this man here? Who is this man? I don't understand what's going on. What is this place? It was extremely captivating. I really liked the writing and the setting. I mean, it just transported you to this place. It was really, really good. So definitely would recommend that if you're in a reading slump and looking for something to get out of it. My next best book of this year is actually a series. It is The Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second one, The Words of Radiance, but I've read Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and I'm working on Oathbringer right now. This was one of my goals, was to read this series this year. As you can see, this is why I didn't get 50 books. Okay, do you see how many pages this is? And the font is literally 7. I love this series. If you enjoy fantasy at any capacity, you need to read this. Hey everyone, so I realized when I was editing this video that I totally forgot to say what Stormlight Archives was about. Honestly, this is a very, very hard series to explain, but essentially, do you like my plan? It is a war between humans and non-humans. And the war was started by the assassination of the human king. The world is extremely expansive. It is very, very complicated. And you're following 3 people that live within this world that are ranking at different heights of society. I've like raved about this to so many people. Okay, because I love Game of Thrones, like watching the TV show. I have not read the books, which I need to do. It is so immersive. This series will transport you, just totally transport you. The character building in this book is amazing. I mean, you become so connected to these characters. The plot, there's so much political like tension and intrigue. There is a reason why these books are so hyped up on BookTube, because they're absolutely incredible, like absolutely insane. I'm really, really enjoying reading this. And you know, it not only like takes you through this like really immersive world, but it also deals with like mental health issues like depression, past trauma, and like the way that he frames his characters and writes his characters just give them so much depth. I'm sure that many people already know about this series that are on this channel, but there's a reason that it's so hyped. So please read it if you are at all interested in it. And I know that people always say that you should read Mistborn before, like Mistborn is like a starting point to Sanderson before reading Way of Kings, but like I think you can totally read Way of Kings. Also, I would like to say, if you are reading Way of Kings and you are halfway through and you're like, this is so boring, I get it. I was there too. I would recommend listening to the audiobooks, because once you probably get about halfway through the first one, it just like flies and it picks up and like it doesn't stop. I think another really cool thing about this series too is it like builds and builds and builds, and like it's just so expansive. You know, I'm on the third book right now and there's so much we don't know, and you're just speculating about what's happening and what is actually going on in this world and like how the whole universe works. It's just so cool. My next favorite book that I enjoyed this year was Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. Masterpiece. I love Sally Rooney. She is one of my favorite authors ever, and this is her third book. I've read all of her books so far, and I think Normal People's my favorite, and then this one. Two best friends, four different people, and it's a book about friendship. It's a book about commentary on capitalism. It's a book about romance. You're kind of following these four characters and like weaving in and out of their lives. It's a book about nothing, but it's also a book about something. Like there's a lot of political commentary in here, which I actually like really appreciated. This is a book for the millennial soul. That's what I'll say. I felt this book to my core. I felt like I could see myself in each of these characters. I really, really loved the way Sally Rooney encapsulated what it's like to be a young 20-something right now, kind of just trying to like struggle through life and trying to understand like why our world is the way it is. It just validated all of the emotions that I'm feeling in my daily life, you know, talking about, you know, the monotony of jobs and trying to understand like why our political system is the way it is. It talked about the complexity of relationships, you know, how relationships can be fluid and how relationships aren't black and white. For me, whenever I read romance books, it's just like they always end up together and nothing's wrong and everything's great. But that's not real life. And I think that's why I don't like romance that much, but this really shows the complexity of relationships. And I think if you are a millennial right now, just read this book. It just talks about how it is to be a millennial right now. Like, I feel like that's what this book was to me. And I just felt so seen and so spoken to, and I felt validated and everything. I don't think this book is for everyone, but I really, really appreciated it. I loved it. Sally Rooney is just so complex, and that's what I love about her. She just sees the complexity and the nuance. Every relationship is fluid and our feelings are fluid, and I love her writing. I gotta read Normal People next year again. That's definitely a reread. All right, only 2 books left. So this next book is very popular. It was a new release this year. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Loved this book. I am a Taylor Jenkins Reid stan. So this book is set in the 1980s. It follows a fictional character called Mick Riva, who was mentioned in Taylor Jenkins Reid's Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It follows his family and his 4 children. So the book is mainly about the 4 kids, their relationships with each other, their relationships with their parents, and their relationships like as a para-Hollywood socialite in the 1980s. I normally am not a historical fiction person, but this is right up my alley. I love Hollywood. Like, I love pop culture. This was just such a fun book to read. It was so fast. It talks a lot about like the surfing culture, and also that like Hollywood social scene back in the 80s. It's just a fun time. Also a really hard time. I cried in this book also. As you can tell, I like emotional books, and just get ready for my last one. Taylor Jenkins Reid is just an incredible author. The writing brings you right in. It's so easy to read. Like, anyone could read this and just get completely thrown into it. I think this is a story that could be easily made into TV. Like, the vibes of this book are immaculate. This is the vibe. Like, read it in the summer. This is the vibes. These are the vibes. I just loved being in that environment and following the drama and the family drama and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just so intriguing to me as someone who loves reality TV, as someone who loves Hollywood pop culture. I really, really enjoyed this book, but also it was so layered as well. Like the family drama and relationships between all of them were enticing. Like I couldn't look away. I had to figure out what was happening, and like the ending, oh, just damn. There's a reason it was so hyped this year. It's just phenomenal. And my last book. This is the only ranking in this video, and it is number 1. This is the best book I have read of all time, and that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I think I want to get a tattoo for this book. I'm not kidding you. It was amazing. I don't have my copy with me because I loaned it to one of my friends. When I tell you a book has never gotten me like this, I am not exaggerating. Hi, I'm reading A Little Life. Not going well. Not going well. I am currently on part 2, chapter 2, and like not even bad things have happened yet. I mean, some of them, they keep talking about them, or like talking about, you know, that there's a bad thing that's gonna happen. I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready. Send help. I cried. Like I could cry literally right now thinking about it. I was extremely intimidated to read this book, just like I think everyone in the world is. This book follows 4 friends who met in college: Malcolm, Jude, Willem, and JB. And you're mainly following Jude. Jude has the most traumatic past you can ever think of. I mean, when I say trigger warnings for everything, just like everyone else says, trigger warnings for everything. It is so painful and so hard to read. But it's a generational novel following these 4 friends from their college days as adults. You're kind of following their entire life, their careers, their relationships with each other. I'm literally gonna cry thinking about it. When I've never felt as emotionally impacted by a book as I have with this book. Like, these characters are real to me, like absolutely 100% real people to me. I don't know how she wrote this book. I've watched so many interviews because I loved this book so much. You feel like they are real. Like, you feel like you are taking a look into their lives and a look into their relationships. It was a masterpiece of literature. I loved it. And I know a lot of people say this is torture porn, which I can totally understand. But I think the reason that I loved it so much is because I've never felt that kind of emotion for book characters before. I was sitting on the couch crying literally for like 8 hours straight because of this book. I finished this book and just kept crying. I'm finishing A Little Life. I'm not okay. Oh, this is fucking torture. I don't understand. Like, this is the most I've cried in like years. I do love an emotional book, and I think this book really spoke to me. There is such a place in my heart for these characters, and oh my god, it's just the best book I've ever read. With all this being said, this book is not for everyone. You really have to be in a good mental state to be able to read this. Like, this is not easy to read at all. I really wouldn't just challenge yourself to read it if you don't feel like you are in a healthy mental space, because it will ruin you. Because it ruined me. I stopped and restarted this book so many times because it was really, really hard for me to read. I think people who read it either absolutely love it, like I do, or absolutely hate it. Like, I can totally understand how you would hate this. It's unrealistically painful. Like, unimaginably painful. If you are interested in that book, seriously look up the trigger warnings, because it's no joke. It's really, really hard to read, but I don't think a book will ever impact me like that again. I know Hanya Yanagihara is coming out with a new book, which I cannot wait. I am ready to be destroyed. But if you are interested at all, just look up the trigger warnings and just be emotionally prepared to be destroyed, okay? All right, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you would liked this video, please leave a comment, subscribe, say hey. Please leave some of your favorite books of 2021 down in the comments. I would love to hear them. I hope everyone has a great day.